Hello, it's Mrs. Wallace. I'm just doing this quick video in case you missed class today. Just a heads up, we did a few of those presentations, so that actually took quite a bit of time, like at least half of the class period, and we talked a little bit about some current events like the railroad strike that was looking like it was going to happen, but now it seems to be resolved. But we talked about a couple of issues, just related to the news. And then we got into some introductory content. So I'm just going to share with you what I shared with the class this morning. And I'm just going to, just kind of note it. The PowerPoint is on Schoology. Of course, you have the video. And then a lot of this relates to the homework that was, that economic thinking homework that was pretty recent. So there's probably a whole bunch of overlap with this topic, stuff that you're already kind of familiar with. But a couple of things, really, what is economics? What is the field all about? Some of your peers suggested, well, it's really all about decision making and how we can make decisions knowing that we have scarce resources. And for the most part, economics exists because resources are scarce, right? If we had enough of everything, we wouldn't need to think about how to allocate goods. And that's essentially what an economic system tries to answer, okay? We also, can kind of define scarcity. It's something that comes up as a term in econ. So if you're just noting that word, we're really just talking, some things we kind of are given that they're scarce, maybe not enough textbooks, not enough, seats in a college, not enough of whatever, but we all have unlimited needs and wants, right? And resources are limited. So of course, we always are making choices. How do we use resources? The choice to do one thing means you can't be doing something else. And economics is really the study of how to best allocate those resources. When it comes to micro, we're really looking at choices, but specific choices, individuals, firms, and governments, the players in the economy as they're making decisions. That's what microeconomics is really all about. We can look at some examples, and this is pretty straightforward. Consumers, for example, choosing to buy jeans or buying shoes. Businesses are choosing how many people to hire. They don't have to hire, 3 people or 8 people or whatever. They have to make that choice. When is it, kind of a good idea to stop hiring individuals? Governments are going to choose on how to spend on public housing or COVID vaccines or whatever else. Every single player in the economy is making a variety of choices about how to, work through scarce resources. The textbook definition is here. Social science concerned with the efficient use of scarce resources. Note the word efficiency. Economists are not only interested in using scarce resources and allocating them, they want to do that in the most efficient way, basically making, the next person well off without making anyone else, somebody should be well off and not worse off. As soon as you're starting to make people better off and there's also people being made worse off, that's where we start asking questions. Should we continue, to do this particular policy or whatever? So we're looking at, a goal of trying to achieve maximum satisfaction. For consumers, that's maximizing utility. For firms, that would be maximizing profit. Although Patagonia recently sold their company to a group, a trust fund that's going to be using it exclusively for issues related to the environment. So not all firms apparently are seeking profit, but it's really common. Microeconomics versus macroeconomics. Micro is going to be pretty straightforward. You're always looking at individuals, firms, industries. There's a couple of examples here. Supply and demand in the market for peaches. It's the market specifically for peaches that makes this like of interest for microeconomists. Production costs for Apple, a specific firm. Labor market for nurses. In this case, we wouldn't be talking about the entire labor market or the unemployment rate for, say, the whole United States. That would be something that's more of a macroeconomics topic, but the labor market for nurses, specifically what's happening with supply and demand of nurses in a particular state, for example, that's a microeconomic topic. Whenever it comes to macroeconomics, we're looking at study of the large economy as a whole. This could really mean the global economy, the US economy, even the New Jersey economy. But we're looking at data that's basically describing economic aggregates, even aggregate supply and demand, the demand of all the consumers in the US, the demand or the supply of a great number of firms. That's really more of a macroeconomic type of topic. And examples would be, economic growth and calculating GDP, government spending, inflation, unemployment, international trade. Those are largely macroeconomic topics. So just kind of note the difference. Something I did mention in class is that we do quiz often in AP Micro. Part of that is to just because the course is cumulative and there's a lot of ideas that build upon each other, it's a good way to kind of assess your understanding, and you work with like smaller bits of information at a time. So the first quiz that we have in class will likely be next Tuesday. I'm going to post it tonight, but it'll be on the homework that you did on economic thinking and some of this content. And so an example of a question that you might see is, pick out the microeconomic versus macroeconomic, example. And we use this to give a sense of what those examples might be. So the first one, the supply chain for computer chips, that's microeconomics because it's really specific for computer chip industry. The effects of aggregate consumer debt on overall consumption spending, the word aggregate, the word overall, that's telling us it's really a macroeconomic topic. How consumers respond to changes in gasoline prices, because we're talking about prices related to a particular product. That's a microeconomics topic. The relation between the size of the money supply, say in the United States, and the rate of inflation, that's a macroeconomics topic. And job training programs available to high school graduates in the field of solar technologies. That would be something that's micro because of the field of solar technologies, okay? We also just noted, and this is really kind of a broad thing, there are different ways in which we use economics, and I could even mention a third here. Some economists are really interested in the models and the theories, essentially creating theories and laws that help predict some type of behavior in the economy, right? So, for example, like the law of demand, which basically suggests that when prices increase or decrease, the quantity of a good that is demanded will change, right? Higher prices, lower quantity demanded, lower prices, greater quantity demanded. And this is something that, economists accept as something that's kind of tried and true. It is based on theory, and it is accepted as the law of demand. There are other theories too that economists put forth that are kind of based on, an understanding of how the behavior might be patterned and what expected outcomes might be. We'll work with a great deal of models. Of course, we're not developing those models in the basic course, but just have an idea that there's a good number of economists that are kind of working on new models, kind of working on new types of productivity, for example, something that's very service industry oriented. A lot of economic models and theory kind of contain things that would be relevant for manufacturing, but maybe not necessarily newer workplaces. So there is a great deal of connection to developing some of that theory. Of course, there's also a lot of applied economics or policy economics. This would be taking a lot of those theories and actually designing public policies or firm policies or decisions around particular issues, kind of making decisions for particular players in the economy based on those theories. So you're kind of using the theories, using the models to make some sort of decision. That's what we think of when we think of, our course and economics as a whole. Something else that I mentioned in class is that a lot of modern movements in economics, certainly there's other specialties within the field of economics. Behavioral economics is getting a lot of attention, labor economics, environmental economics. There's a great deal of growth in all of those areas of economics. but there's also a great deal of empirical research. So sometimes we have these theories and we use the theories and the models to kind of help us predict what particular outcomes will be. But lots of economists are also trying to go like to the site of a firm or look at the outcome of what the minimum wage might lead to in terms of, a benefit to an employee. How useful is the minimum wage? We can actually track that, using data in the fast food industry. And we're seeing more and more economists kind of collect data. And sometimes what's interesting is some of the data and some of the empirical research seems to fly differently than what some of the models suggest should happen. So kind of real world empirical data versus kind of using and applying a theory to predict what's likely to happen. Those are all different areas of econ. And we stopped here, this positive versus normative statements, kind of this difference on looking at, it's kind of the factual information, statistical information, models, things that economists basically would accept, the theory of comparative advantage or whichever, understanding that this particular theory means this and it suggests this. That's kind of a positive statement, right? Positive statements might be things like, what the inflation rate is or something like that. Of course, once you start getting into value judgments, and we're going to see a lot of economists who do this as well, who start to use economic theory to suggest this is the way things should be. There should be this, particular subsidy for college education. There should be, free, what we call like free or public health care. There should be this or there should be that. Those are known more as normative statements. Okay, so value judgments, what ought to be. And we'll look at this tomorrow. That is it. And we'll see you in class tomorrow.